If you thought, ladies and gentlemen, will say that, you know, the dairy industry is facing pretty substantial challenges at the moment, which it is, just judge, will say, against the kind of challenges that faced John and Angela Fitzpatrick. John is going to come up and speak, will say, that Angela may contribute later, will say, but this is a remarkable story. And I think it's a tribute, it's an absolute tribute to both of them. John, could we have a speaker, please? Yeah. John and Angela are from Galway, will say that I actually don't need to give much of an introduction because the story will tell you, it really will tell you that. So.
I have one here. So, hello everyone. As Mike said, John Fitzpatrick is my name. I'm married to Angela and we're from Athlroy in Galway. And today I'd like to take you through our story and dealing with change. I think everyone would agree that change is inevitable. You know, we see farming, this change going on all around us, our personal lives, our family. And how we deal with change, it's very much a personal choice. So what I'd like to do is take you through a timeline of where we've come from, why we had to change, and what we changed, and where that has left us today. So to give you some background, born on a dairy farm, did my leaving cert in 1983, and after that I went to Ag College, did 2 years in Ag College, and that included a dairy diploma in Gurteen Ag College. Now this was the mid-late 80s and jobs were scarce, so I hit off for America and ended up in Manhattan working as a barman, and that's where I met Angela. So we did a time there and we moved home, nearer to home. Angela went to London. I started to get more involved in the farm, and I'd do the first half of the year from, say, January to June involved in the farm, and then I'd go across to London working in construction. And of course there was the added attraction that Angela was over there. So to bring you up to the 90s, we both moved home. I was farming. When I got involved, I was working with a company called Earls Engineering. They do farm and industrial buildings, and I was involved in sales on the road. Angela started her own company, a company called Western Hygiene, and she was a 50% shareholder in that. So my parents retired in '96, and we took over the home farm. It was 100 acres. We inherited some of it and leased more of it long term. So from there we pushed on. We expanded the cows from 50 cows to 120. Now quota, we were lucky we were supplying Arabon, so quota was more freely available than it was down here in the south. We bought land, took on a full-time employee on the farm, and around that time 3 of us came together and we formed a discussion group called the Galway Grazers. That was Henry Walsh, Pádraig Cummins and myself, and Bryony Fitzgerald. Many of you will know Bryony facilitated for us. So we had all come from a background of winter milk, and we had changed over to spring milk, so we were focused on cost control, growing grass and getting it into cows, crossbreeding. So we were pretty progressive. I wouldn't want to forget, Ange and I had got married in '96, and Jack was born in '98, with Alice born in '99. And just to point out, that's Mum and Dad's house there with the yard in the background, and our house bottom left, and the farm obviously, and the cows in the background. So move on to, say, late 2001. Earls Engineering and Western Hygiene had expanded dramatically, and we were extremely busy. I think Ange and I, between us, we were doing over 150,000 kilometres a year on the road. Plus we had invested in several houses, rental houses. Yeah, we were absolutely pushing ourselves hard, but like we had a huge energy, we had a huge gusto for life. We had plans and we had goals, but the day simply wasn't long enough. It was 15-hour days, 7 days a week. It was chaotic, but it was enjoyable. Now, if you were to ask me, was there a work-life balance? No, that wasn't high on the agenda, and I would have to hold my hands up as being the guilty party there. So, move on to 2002. I had been losing weight, and I was constantly out of breath. So I went into my GP, took bloods. He rang me that evening and he said, "John, you need to get into hospital fast." So into A&E, and you know the usual, it takes a long time to get through that process. But I can remember in the middle of the night, I asked the doctor I was dealing with, I said, "Listen, have you any idea what's going on here?" And as he was leaving the cubicle, he just pulled back the curtain and he said, "Oh yeah, you have leukemia. We don't know which kind yet, but we'll do more tests and we'll come back to you on that." So it was as brief and as direct as that. So I was 35, and what I had CLL, chronic lymphocytic leukemia. It's more normally a disease of people in their 70s and 80s, so I was very unusual to have it at my age. The prognosis was that it was terminal, and I was told I had 5 to 8 years to live, so basically, get your affairs in order. So we'd been up to 100, and that's like hitting a mass concrete wall. That brought us to a stop. That's pretty stark. I was fortunate with CLL. CLL is chronic, so there was no immediate urgency, and it gave us a chance to draw a breath or to look around us and consider our options. Naturally, I went for a second opinion, so that's where I met Dr. Elizabeth Vandenberg. She's based in St. James's and went through all the options. And she suggested I contact a man called Frank Giles. He was actually a Galway man, but based in Texas. And he was considered the leading researcher on CLL worldwide, actually. And as luck would have it, I had actually sold his mother a shed. So that definitely helped. Excuse me. So the advice from Elizabeth Vandenberg and from Frank Giles was I needed to stay fit and healthy for as long as possible, that there were new treatments coming down the tracks for CLL. It would involve a bone marrow transplant, but there was no immediate urgency with that. The transplant was going to be a few years away. So we had that decision made, and up to that point and since, I've never read up, I never Googled, I never researched CLL. I felt we had done enough research, we were going to have faith in the doctors. The odds with the transplant were 50-50, which to me was a far better bet than enjoy the 5 to 8 years. So we were going to put our faith in the medical people. Family at that stage, Paddy was born 4 weeks after I was diagnosed, and Rory was born two years later in 2004. He was a surprise baby, I can tell you. So what actually changed? Through this focus, we had broken it down into 3 areas. There was medical, which we had almost set that aside. Then there was financial, and obviously family. So in dealing with the financial, obviously, Ange and I, we talked, Mum and Dad, we talked, but we needed a different perspective. So we lent on trusted family and friends, and that came back to, say, the Galway Grazers with Henry and Porrick and Bryony. We did a full day on what were our options with the farm. We did another day with Con and Mike, 2 days actually, down in Clonakilty, and that was on financials. What would we do going forward from a financial perspective? I've always kept a diary. Every January I get my brand new A4 diary, and everything is written down, whether it was when I was farming, working with Earls, even when I go into any of my medical appointments, I always have my diary with me. And through all these brainstorming sessions, I'm always very clear that if you write something down, it has a much better chance of actually happening. Even in preparing for this, I was able to go back, that's nearly whatever number of years ago, and go through the process and use those notes. So the goal was financial security. And we almost had to go down the road and look back, begin with the end in mind. And what we needed was secure passive income, an income stream into the future for Angela, the children, for mum and dad, to cover for all eventualities, including if I pop my clogs going through the process of the transplant. Obviously I haven't. Along with financial security, we needed to reduce the workload. It was made very clear to me that with the transplant, I have much reduced energy levels, and that I was going to have ongoing infection problems. And we needed time, needed space to deal with the transplant. So around this time, that was late, 2004, I was doing a course called the Wealth Creation course. Several of my former classmates are here, and they told me they're going to give me a hard time in the questions afterwards. So, but we used this, the timing of this course was really timely in that it allowed us to create a framework to move this process forward. And just one element of that was, where were we going to invest going forward? Where was this income stream going to come from? And, we needed a list of criteria, almost filters, which we put together, and that strategy, that framework, we use that to this day. Of course it has evolved and moved on, but it's useful right up to today. So, what actually changed? We had started with 100 acres and we had bought 70 acres, so when we met the grazers, we were saying we'd sell the land we had bought and we'd buy cattle in the spring or lease it out. But it didn't answer the key question of giving us financial security. And it was Dad. Dad was 78 at the time. He was always a very logical, clear thinker. He was absolutely crystal clear. And this was a man now that had reclaimed all this land, removed ditches, reseeded it, had gone to open days in Moore Park. He was absolutely clear to sell was the solution. We had to remove sentiment and just get on with it. So that's what we did. On the 1st of October, of the 170 acres, we sold 158. We held on to 12 acres, which is around our house and Mum and Dad's house. We sold cows, heifers, machinery, and I mean it right down to the wheelbarrow. We left nothing but the wheelbarrow in the yard. The land we held on to, the yard was there, so we held on to 4 sheds and we converted them for storage. We let them out. Any other sheds, cubicle sheds, we removed them, sold them, knocked the walls, filled in slatted tanks. We were left with a neat and tidy, low maintenance yard. That's a standalone unit with a separate entrance at this stage. And that's our farming today. We just buy in a few heifers in the spring, sell them in the autumn. No slurry, no silage. If we have any surpluses, a local farmer takes them away. So to step back then to the CLL, for 2002 and 3, I was on cocktails, light cocktails of steroids and chemo. But early 2004, the blood started to go in the wrong direction, so I was penciled in for a bone marrow transplant in early 2005, and I had heavier chemo in the second half of 2004, which is the time I was doing the Wealth Creation course. So the actual transplant, 25th of January 2005, which was 3 years to the day after I was diagnosed, I had full body radiation in St. Luke's, and Lucy, my sister, was my marrow match. After that, I had a long stint in St. James's in total isolation. Then from the 5 or 6 years from 2005 through to 2010, there was a lot of hospital stays, infection. It's a very invasive process, so there was a lot of side issues, bucket loads of antibiotics and steroids. But during that process, I think partners are often neglected. Angela was trying to raise 4 children under the age of 7, running Western Hygiene. So that was particularly tough on Angela. All I had to do was lie back and pretend to be a patient. So what happened with our other areas of work? Earls Engineering, I had continued working from 2002 right up to the transplant, and I came back in mid-late 05, struggled through 06, but my remit was to keep steel in front of the workshop and in front of the teams on the road, but I simply wasn't doing that, so I had to step away in March 07. Western Hygiene, Angela had continued to drive on with that, and I would have to say John Earls, my boss, and Kevin, Angela's work partner, they were just fantastic through all that. But Kevin wanted to push on with Western Hygiene. He wanted to make quite a sizable acquisition in early 08, but it was going to involve a significant amount of debt, which we just weren't comfortable with. It didn't fit in with where we wanted to go. So the solution was that Angela sold her 50% of Western Hygiene to Kevin in August 08. So where did that leave us? We had sold the farm. I had quit Earls's. We had sold Western Hygiene. So we invested with several off-farm interests now, and that has given us financial security. So in dealing with change, the previous slides, they dealt with, as I said at the beginning, the where had we come from, why had we changed, and what had changed. And that's almost tangible, easy to describe. There was actions involved, but the mental side of the process, it's much harder to articulate and very often deal with. It was totally new ground for me anyway. We knew our priorities had to change. We were on a work treadmill and we had to step off that. And I'm probably quite a structured person. We always break down problems, and we broke it down into options and decisions. And with the medical, we had looked at our options and our decisions, and we handed that to them, and it was almost out of our hands. But in the financial, the farm was within our control. Earls Engineering was, Western Hygiene was. But ultimately, it was up to us to take action. So, in the face of adversity, definitely mindset is absolutely key. You've got to back yourself. You have to have a bit of resilience, and just you have to get on with it. And especially what's within your control, and while you're in a position to do so. I think very often, the theory part of it is almost the options and the decisions, but then does fear of change set in? Do we become almost paralysed, or do you become a victim and feel sorry for yourself? There just wasn't room for that. Now, I mentioned about the mental side of it. There's definitely identity or lack of identity or loss of. I'd gone from being a progressive dairy farmer in and out of farms up and down the west coast, from Sligo down to Cork, to all of a sudden I had nothing to do. So there's a vacuum there. There's a vulnerability, and there's a transition phase in that as well. I think it's a basic human need that we all need a reason to get out of bed. We all need a purpose. We need a daily challenge, and if you aren't tuned in, if you almost resign or clock out, I think that's a very slippery slope. So initially, my diagnosis, was a huge negative, but in time it evolved, the change process, into being a massive positive, in that it forced us to change. Yeah, without a doubt, anyone looking in could see we needed to change, but would we have changed? That's the big question. I don't honestly know that. And then there was the added benefit, the opportunity that it presented, in that, I could invest off farm, and to this day that's my primary daily job to look after our, I still call it our off-farm investments. So the third of our focus areas was family. And, the medical, we had handed to others. The financial, we had dealt with. That was in place. But we needed time for simple stuff, bringing the guys to training, coming home from a game, what did I do right, what did I do wrong in the game, the post-match analysis, sitting around the table at home, just not rushing and racing. Family holidays, time for Ange to meet her girlfriends, time for Angela and I together, and for our wider family and friends, up to 01. Jesus, we had time for no one. It was just go, 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 go. And you talk about reinvent yourself. I could never have seen myself being involved in the children's education, but it was my area. I got involved in their lessons, parent-teacher meetings, picking subjects for the junior cert, the leaving cert, researching college choices with them, going to college open days. And it was an area I actually really enjoyed, and I could never have seen myself involved in that. Sport was another area. The guys, they've all been involved in sport, hurling, football, rugby, soccer, triathlon, right up along, and they still are to this day. And I think the importance of team sports, you just can't put a value on it. The friends they make, learning to lose, building a bit of resilience, dealing with a ref, and of course the ref is always wrong. And things like the importance of diet and keeping fit and well, and those skills are definitely transferable to life after that. So where are the guys today? Jack on the left, he has just finished his Master's in Engineering, and he's in New York at the moment working as a barman, coming home in September to start a new job. Alice is in Boston for the summer, and she comes home to her 4th year in college, while Paddy's all the way across in Vancouver for the summer, and he comes back to his 3rd year in college, while Rory, the guy on the right, he's home alone with us for the summer, working as Supermax, and goes into leaving cert in September. So we see the guys, we see our kids as our legacy, and we would like to think that the time we've spent with them, that they'll grow up well-rounded, mature adults, ready to go on their own journey. So a quick update, health-wise, since 2011, I've been good, blips along the way, and I still have plenty hospital contact, but I'm in great shape. We try and keep a reasonably healthy diet, regular exercise. Ange and I walk a lot, and it's a great time to talk, and of course you have the coffee on the way home. And hopefully we'll get back to a bit of travel now that things are opening up. So have we achieved balance? Yeah, we're still busy, but it's much more on even keel. Life is at a much more relaxed pace, and I'm actually back working in Earls 2 days a week, and Angela the same in Western Hygiene, but it's at our pace. There's not the same pressure that there was in the past. We appreciate the simple things, and we really are so grateful, for the breaks we've got. So to wrap it up, renewables, it's the buzzword of the moment, but we'd be very clear, the time is not renewable. It's one of life's really precious resources. I'm sure all of us here would love to live long, healthy lives into our 80s and 90s. And I have a vision of one of our children or grandchildren even saying, would you change anything? I'm quite sure all of us, or none of us here would say, I'd bought another house or milked another 100 cows. But I'd be very clear that most of us would say, Jesus, wish I'd spent more time with family and friends. So that's our story. Thank you very much.
John, I'll do that. John will say that it's a story of courage, resilience, the rationality in terms of breaking things down, but extraordinary team effort. So Angela, would you like to say a few words?
I suppose for me, my biggest concern at the time would have been the kids. And this big change, you know, I wanted to hold on to their innocence and, you know, try and keep life as normal as possible. So it was all about making a routine, you know, keeping it as much routine and normality. And in fairness, we tried our best, muddled through, you know. It was great in, like, when John was at home, he was always, he liked the living area. He didn't want to be in the room when he was sick. So in our house with 3 lads and arguing and fighting and, you know, they'd be on top of him, they'd be whatever. And he took no notice. He just, you know, ploughed through again. So that's my bit.
We'll take a few questions. We'll say that, John, I'll actually ask you one. We'll say that, you know, that you would have been a highly progressive farmer, and I mean, if life had carried on like you'd have 3 or 4 or 500 cows or whatever, even financially, strangely enough, would you have been better off?
Do you mean if we stayed farming, Mike? Yeah. No, I don't think so. We've been lucky in what we've invested in has worked very well. You know, I'll go back to Porrick and Henry. They're both up to 300 cows now, so that's probably where we would be. But the process we've gone through, and I go back to the investment criteria, that has worked very, very well for us. So quite simply, from a Euro's point of view, we're in a better place. Is that your question? Did I read that right? Yeah.
Because it's not just, it's extraordinary how well John and Angela have adapted and faced the realities of their situation. I'll throw it open for questions. We'll say that
Mike, can I ask a question so to get the ball rolling?
Of course.
John, I mean, I know John a good while now at this stage, and John, it's taken a crisis for you and Angela to reevaluate your life and your goals and everything, okay? And obviously you've done it very successfully. What advice would you give to people? You know, you don't have to face a crisis, but what should people be doing if they want to look at their life situation, whatever it is, and examine it and maybe make changes?
Well, I think anything in the extreme, and you know, people talk about alcoholics or drug addicts or whatever, but my life was, and I would point the finger at me, it was 15 hours a day, it was 7 days a week, and it was about creating wealth. And when I did the wealth creation course, I went to that strictly about the business end of it. Now, it turned out there was very much 2 F's at the business side and the softer side. But that highlighted to us, you know, the importance of balance in life. And how do you address that? I suppose I was lucky. Ange and I always talked. We still do. We discuss everything. The power of something like the discussion group and good friends that you can bounce ideas off.